Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Rappaport, Director of the Center for the Study of Constitutional Originalism at the University of San Diego. And I'd like to welcome everyone to San Diego and USD for the 9th annual Hugh and Hazel Originalism Works in Progress Conference. We have many people who attend each year, either giving papers, commenting, or just being one of the participants. And there are also many others who have attended many different times, and some people are here for the first time. In fact, tomorrow we're going to have our first state Supreme Court justice who will be here and giving a paper. At the Originalism Center, we like to believe that the continuing participation of scholars over time here, along with new participants, helps to promote a kind of community of originalist scholars working on the important issues of originalism. So thank you very much for your participation. Every year I use this time at the beginning of the conference to review the most important events concerning originalism in the past year. I don't like to be too Supreme Court-centric about these matters, but for the third year in a row, I would say that the most important development in originalism involves the Scalia-Gorsuch seat. 2 years ago, it was the sad passing of Justice Scalia. Last year, it was the nomination of Justice Gorsuch, who had written very favorably and insightfully about originalism. He was a promising possibility, but who had not yet sat on any cases at the Supreme Court. This year, I believe the most significant event is the behavior of Justice Gorsuch, his opinions, his votes, and his comments at oral argument in his brief time on the court. In the 19 cases since Gorsuch has been on the court, he has voted with Justice Thomas, the court's arguably most originalist justice, in every one of them. When Justice Thomas dissents, Justice Gorsuch joins the dissent. When Justice Gorsuch concurs, Justice Thomas joins the concurrence. The two even agreed on joining an entire majority opinion except for a single footnote. Now, of course, most of these opinions have involved issues other than constitutional interpretation, but some have been involving constitutional interpretation. And for better or worse, it tends to be a strong predictive content across different areas of the law. It's certainly still early days, but it seems to me that this evidence suggests pretty strongly that Justice Gorsuch is no Justice Souter or Chief Justice Roberts, and could very well be another Justice Thomas. The evidence that Justice Gorsuch is a strong originalist is also supported, I think, by some of his comments at oral argument. And in that way, he certainly is different than Justice Thomas. And just as an example, Justice Gorsuch has even asked recently skeptical questions about the originalist basis for decisions that would allow the court to review state legislative redistricting. Republican nominees have often been disappointments for originalists. So it's natural to ask why Justice Gorsuch might turn out to be a strong originalist. Now, one possible explanation that's often given is that the Trump administration has outsourced the selection of judicial nominees to the Federalist Society. And that's certainly a possible explanation, but there's reasons to doubt it. The Federalist Society also had significant influence over earlier nominations, with prominent members approving of Justice Souter, Justice Alito, Chief Justice Roberts, none of whom have turned out to be strong originalists. A different explanation is generational. Those three justices all went to law school in the pre- or proto-originalist era. They did not read opinions written by Justice Scalia in law school, but Justice Gorsuch did. Gorsuch might also have read Scalia and Thomas opinions when he was in graduate school. Moreover, the originalism that existed during Gorsuch's early years as a lawyer was a more popular and attractive originalism. more popular and attractive than the originalism that existed when those other justices were young lawyers. Thus, it really wouldn't be all that surprising that Gorsuch would be willing to tie his reputation to originalism in a way that Chief Justice Roberts would not be willing to do. Now, in addition to Justice Gorsuch's behavior on the court, I think another event of significance is his confirmation hearings. Here again, there was a significant focus on originalism. Now, the last time that happened was the confirmation hearings of Judge Robert Bork. But while Bork presented a very undeveloped account of originalism, Gorsuch was more persuasive. And I think in part because he could rely on the work done by originalists in the prior generation of time. Besides Justice Gorsuch, there's also been other significant developments in originalism at the Court of Appeals level, and let me just mention that really kind of quickly. First, the Trump administration has appointed several originalists to the Courts of Appeals. And originalism then has been, unsurprisingly, a subject at their confirmation hearings at the Court of Appeals level, which I think is a new development for there to be significant discussions at that level. Now that originalism has, perhaps for the first time, as I say, become an important subject of discussion at these circuit court hearings, suggests both the importance of originalism for judicial decision-making and just how much it's become a politically visible phenomenon. The discussions there may also be explained by the fact that some of these appointees may be expected to be Supreme Court nominees in the future. Overall, then, I think that the past year has seen some very significant developments concerning originalism. Some have involved Justice Gorsuch, but others have involved a sort of greater recognition of the place of originalism in our world. Now, every year I also try to say something about the papers for the conference, which might or might tell us about the originalist work that's being done in the academy. And to begin, this year is clearly a theory-heavy year. As I counted, 5 of the 7 papers are theory papers. And those 5 papers divide into 2 groups, right? We have one group involving normative arguments, with 2 of the papers criticizing originalism and one of them arguing for significant reforms in originalism. And then a second group of the papers is devoted to how to interpret the Constitution and how to construct the Constitution. Right? And of course, there's also 2 non-theory papers, one on the original Constitution and one on the 14th Amendment. Now, I think perhaps the most striking aspect of the papers was how few of them were written by what one might regard as orthodox originalists. Right? We're getting outnumbered, guys. As I counted, only 2 of the papers fall into that category. Of the remaining papers, 3 are written by opponents of originalism. One of the other 2 papers is by someone who advocates significant reforms of originalism, and the other is by someone who holds the unusual view that originalism and living constitutionalism are compatible. Now, I'm not sure what the implications are of these views of the authors of the papers. You know, on the one hand, one might think that it suggests that support for orthodox originalism is waning. But the other possibility, and the one I choose to believe, is that they're a sign of originalism's prominence. That even people who are critics of orthodox originalism believe it's a worthy subject of discussion. Okay, well, putting together a conference of this sort involves a great deal of work, so I'd like to thank various people involved. And first and foremost, as every year, I want to thank Mike Ramsey. Mike and I co-plan the conference every year, and I'm extremely grateful for his help. I also want to thank Steve Smith, who helps put the conference together as well. And thanks also go to Dean Stephen Ferrulo for his support, both for the conference and for the center. In addition, I want to recognize Stacy Groff, who is helping to organize the conference for the first time, And I also want to thank my research assistants, Peter Kashavan, Anna Randall, and Kendra Tovey. So thank you. And finally, I also want to thank Rick Stack and the Hugh and Hazel Darling Foundation for their generous support. Their grant to the center has made possible the continuation of this conference, as well as the various other things that the center does. So thank you to all of them. I thought what we might do is start the conference by having everyone introduce themselves along with their affiliation. So I'm Mike Rappaport, University of San Diego.
Steve Smith, San Diego.
Larry Alexander, San Diego.
Chris Green, University of Mississippi.
Christina Mulligan, Brooklyn Law School.
Eric Siegel, Georgia State.
Evan Bernick, Georgetown.
Harold Lloyd, Wake Forest.
Jack Balkin, Yale Law School.
Richard Primus, University of Michigan.
John McKyle, Georgetown.
Jed Campbell, Richmond.
Mike Ramsey, University of San Diego.
Ed Whalen, Ethics and Public Policy Center.
Stanley Fish, FIU Law and Cardozo Law.
Tom Merrill, Columbia Law School.
Maimon Schwarzschild, San Diego.
Don Drip, San Diego Law.
Kira Sanders, University of Idaho.
Jeremy Tellman, Valparaiso University Law School.
Kurt Lash, Richmond.
Mila Sahoni, University of San Diego.
David Upham, University of Dallas.
Tom Colby, George Washington University.
Stephen Sachs, Duke.
William Bode, Chicago.
John Harrison, Virginia.
Jonathan Mitchell, Stanford.
James Phillips, Beckett Law.
Lawrence Klaus, San Diego.